Hi, all you YouTubers out there. Thank you so much for watching at My Life as a Landlord. I'm so happy that you've joined me today. And as we progress through the podcast, it is becoming more and more my honor and my privilege to bring these lessons to you. I hope that you're enjoying them and I hope that you're learning something. Thank you so much again for educating yourself as you progress in your tenancy journey, your life as a landlord, maybe your life as a tenant, or both. I'm both. I hope this is helping. Hope you learned something. Okay, here we go. Well, hello there, and welcome to My Life as a Landlord. Today is episode 55. Oh my goodness. I am absolutely in disbelief that we have reached this episode mark. This is pretty cool. Today's topic is a landlord topic, and it is one of my favorites because I've developed the sixth sense of landlording. And this is all about the art of checking references, the art of checking references. And as you progress in your landlord life, you're going to get better and better at seeing through some of the crap. You're going to see this. And I'm excited that this is all about screening your tenants. So screening your tenants is absolutely one of the most important things you can do in your rental life. Mike and I often say that we would rather let a unit go empty than put the wrong tenant in. Now, I have found out the most two stressful times in my life as a landlord, getting the right tenant in and getting the wrong tenant out. Today's episode is all about helping you get the right tenant in. Okay, so let's jump into this. I'm going to assume that you've got an ad up for your rental somewhere. We'll talk about marketing for your rentals in a different episode. We're going to just talk about checking references here. So you've got an ad up for your rental. Maybe you've shown it. Maybe you've had an open house. Don't know. For us and for our rental fleet, we require a preliminary application to ensure there is no issues with deal breakers for a potential tenant in the unit. The preliminary application is very simple. We don't require IDs or pay stubs for an initial application. So deal breakers that we're looking for in that preliminary application, things like smoking tenants in a non-smoking unit. Even if they're smoking outside, we don't permit it on certain units. There's too many beings in the unit, right? They've got a family of 6 who want a 1-bedroom. It's not going to work. We're not even going to show them the unit. Too many vehicles for the unit. Maybe they own an auto wrecker and they have 2 tow trucks and 4 vehicles that they're working on. That's not going to work in most of our places. Also, non-approved animals in the unit, such as snakes or aquariums with or without water. Notice that in all of those items, that there's no discrimination. We are following the Fair Housing Guideline on preliminary application deal breakers. We're going to talk more about fair housing as we progress, but I want to let you know, as we go through this, preliminary application for us is required before we even show a unit. So that's what we do. But at some point, you're going to receive a preliminary application. Okay, so somebody's going to throw their name in. They're going to say, hey, it's me and my husband or me and my wife, whatever. And you're going to concurrently check references with them. Maybe they say where their employer is, but they don't provide a pay stub. They provide a contact information for either their current or former landlord, and we go from there, right? And so we'll be showing a unit concurrently to make sure that the unit works for them while we are going through our tenant checklist. Now, I am going to give you lots of information on this today. So if you haven't done so already, I highly encourage you to take some notes. Stop the podcast for now, grab a notebook and notebook and pen or something, because there's a lot of information on this one. And this is vitally important, especially if you are a newbie landlord or a pickle landlord. You want to do this right. If you are a landlord who is growing in your business and you're not a newbie or a pickle landlord, you might learn a nugget or two in this. So this is cool. Okay. So what I do for preliminary application for a potential tenant, what we do is I actually have a reference check sheet. This is for tracking when I receive a preliminary application. Okay, this is for tracking. I put their applicant name on the top, and if there's 2 applicants, they both have to qualify. Same thing with a co-signer. Let's say you have a young person who's never rented before, and one of their parents is going to be a co-signer. Same thing. The co-signer must qualify for this as well. So we do a criminal check on them. We do a civil check on them if we can, depending on where they are. If they provided an ID in their preliminary application, great. If not, they'll have to provide it at the end before we finally qualify them. Same thing with a pay stub or an income proof of some kind of income proof. Maybe they've got maybe you've got someone who's retired and they are living off either their savings or their investment accounts. That's fine, but you've got to make sure that that's true. Previous landlord, at least their previous landlord, if not their last two landlords. You need some proof of housekeeping. You want to make sure that there's not had any mischief. So this is just the check sheet of what I'm doing once we receive the preliminary application. Then we talk about animals. Do they have pets or any other animals? And I'm talking emotional support animals, service animals, anything. If they've got an iguana, something. But we've got to know what the animals are. Also their vehicles, make, model, insured, operating. We got to make sure we understand their vehicles that are involved. Do they have 2 vehicles? Do they have 5 vehicles? I don't know. Maybe they don't have any vehicles. We have tenants that just take the bus. That's fine. Are they a smoker or a vapor? That is becoming more important as we're progressing into this world where you've got vaping going on and smoking. There's a lot of places that are allowing marijuana. But if you don't have a marijuana license or you've got a license to grow marijuana, you need to know all that as a landlord. You need to know that. And one of the last things is a credit report. Credit check. Now you can do a credit check as a landlord, or the tenant can provide a credit score and report. But that is my checklist for now. We're going to go into even more. So if you wanted a difficult podcast about checking references, well, guess what? This is exactly what you signed up for. I'm going to rattle this off again, and then you will be able to see some of this on the website, mylifeasalandlord.com. Okay. Now, let's see. We're going to go through this. Criminal check, ID, income, proof of income or pay stub, previous landlord or former landlord, at least, we usually say 3 years of landlording. Pets or animals, vehicles. Are they a smoker or a vapor? Do they have a license to grow marijuana or smoke marijuana? And then their credit status. Okay, that's a lot to track, but if a tenant wants your rental, that's required. That's how we do it. And we really screen our tenants. There's a lot of people who agree and then go, wow, you really screen them. I do screen them. I don't want any riffraff in my tenants at all. Okay, now the one that the tenant checklist, the potential tenant checklist that I am going off of that I just read to you, it's in Microsoft Word that you can print and track manually. If you have 1 or 2 rentals, that might work for you. If you want to do it remotely, if you want to do it on Google Drive and you have someone that is local to your rental or your property manager, you can track it on an electronic means like Google Drive or Sync. Or if you've got a program, there's a couple different programs that you can use and you can track all of your application criteria through your program. But the whole idea here is that you want to go through each one, and there may be items that I missed. If you are a seasoned landlord and I missed something, please email me, learn@mylifeasalandlord.com. I enjoy when other landlords educate me. I think that's actually really cool because that's the whole idea of this podcast, is to educate one another. Okay, so that's the first aspect of this. You've received a preliminary application. You've got your potential checklist, potential tenant checklist, or I call it potential tenant reference check sheet, whatever it's called, doesn't matter. But at some point, you're going to get to the previous landlord reference check. Previous landlord. Okay, this is one that most people have a real hard time doing. I don't have a hard time doing it because I've been doing it for a long time. So I'm going to teach you what I know. Now, this is when you are calling former landlords for a potential tenant. You're calling them. You're picking up the phone, dialing the number. Okay, so let's go through this scenario. Let's go a couple different ways. First of all, let's make sure that the phone number that potential tenant provided works. Let's say it's cut off. Voicemail's not set up. It doesn't even ring, nothing. Go back to your potential tenant and say, that phone number is no good. Can you provide another contact information, another contact number, maybe they have something else. Maybe the former landlord is no longer living or is not able to answer questions. That has happened. We've got a lot of folks that are either passed away or are not able to provide references anymore because of their health conditions, right? So, but I always go back to the potential tenant and say, look, I need another reference of some kind. So that's if the number doesn't work. Okay. So then let's go through here. You as a landlord are calling another landlord for a reference. So it sounds like this. Hello there. My name is Jennifer, and I've received a tenancy application from applicant name. He or she has listed you as a previous landlord. Do you have a minute or two to talk now? And then you pause. You pause. Because remember, this other landlord is receiving a call from you out of the blue. The chances are, I'll say medium, 50-50, that the tenant that gave this reference may have called them and said, hey, can I use you as a reference? Maybe they didn't, right? They may not have. So it may be coming out of the blue. If you're catching this other landlord off guard, then they may say, no, you know what? Can I call you back, or can you call me back in 15 minutes? If they say that, set a timer on your phone and call them back. Remember, time is of the essence when you're talking about qualifying these tenants. Okay. You don't want to wait a week and then call them. No, you want to call them as soon as you can. If they say yes, if you're asking if they have a minute or two to talk and they say yes, here's the trick. You don't want to have them on the phone for half an hour. You want to get the information from them and then let them be, because chances are what they're going to do is they're going to answer your questions, hang up the phone, and then call the tenant, the potential tenant. Hey, so-and-so just called me about your application. I hope you get it, right? That's what's going to happen. Okay. If yes. So first thing I say is, great. How long did they rent from you? Oh, they rented for 5 years. They rented for 10 years. They rented for 5 months, only 1 month, whatever it is. And then I say, what exactly did they rent from you? And they'll say, oh, they rented a room in my house, or they rented our cottage back in the backyard, or they rented one of our apartments. Then I typically say, okay, how many bedrooms did they rent? Typically, I try to say how many bedrooms, because that tells me how big and what kind of responsibility was involved if it's a separate suite. So if they say it's a 2-bedroom cottage, or it was a 1-bedroom in my house with a shared bathroom and a shared kitchen, that's pretty intimate, right? That's pretty intimate. Did the tenant have pets or animals? They'll say yes, no. Did they have any issues with the animals or the pets? No, we didn't have any issues. Or yes, the pet can get a little grumpy or can bark a lot. They're going to tell you a little bit about this. One of my favorite questions is about mischief. Was there any issues with mischief or behavior for this tenant? Meaning, if they're sharing a room in the house, did they do what they're supposed to do? Did they put their dishes away? Did they act normal? Did they, if they're renting a cottage, did they, were they, playing video games and being loud and lights on at 2 a.m? That kind of thing. Was there mischief for not behaving? Did they ever receive any warning letters? Right? If they start to say yes for some of this, that is a big red flag. Okay. Were there any issues with late rent or utility payments? If they start to say, yes, they would pay usually rent late 2-3 days, but I would always get paid. Okay. In my program, my tenants pay on or before the first at midnight every time. This isn't a discussion. If they're going to be late, then there's a late fee, but they also need to communicate with me. And my tenants are fantastic at communicating. They'll say, Jen, something happened, unforeseen. Can I pay you a bit late on Friday? That is absolutely not the norm for my crew. Not the norm at all. They are phenomenal and they're great communicators. So if that is normal for this tenant to pay late on rent or utility, that could be a big red flag for you. It'd be a huge red flag for me. Okay. Then there's 3 other quick questions we ask. Did the tenant give proper notice to end tenancy, or did they just move out? Did they give proper notice? Whatever that means in the area, whether it's 30 days or 2 weeks or 1 full calendar month, whatever that means, did they give proper notice to the landlord to end tenancy? Will the tenant get their deposits back? Will they get them back? And typically, if you end tenancy early for my units, they forfeit the deposits. And so if I get a call, I'll say, no, they forfeited their deposits. However, I would have had no problem had they not ended it early due to work or due to whatever. I would have given their deposits back, no problem. We had no problem with renting to them, for example. And then my favorite question, if you only have one question to ask them this: would you rent to them again? Remember, you're talking to the former landlord. Would you rent to them again? If they say yes, that is a big tell. If they delay at all, if they say, okay, yeah. Remember, for me, I always say there is two ways a landlord will answer your questions for these references. They'll answer. There's two versions. The first version is the yes, no. How long did they rent from you? 6 months. They don't embellish at all. They're just trying to get through your questions, and that's it. The other kind is a glowing reference where you just have to say, oh my gosh, I rented to Christine and she was amazing and she would do this. And literally you don't even have to ask them any questions typically, because they will answer them for you. Now, which one do you want? So you need to make sure you're getting a hold of these former landlords as a reference. You need to talk to them. And if you can't get a hold of them, sometimes that is telling in itself. Okay. So that is how I look through the entire conversation, and just at the very end of this conversation that I'm having with this former landlord, the last thing I will typically say is, knowing that we are working on renting to this person, is there anything else I should know as their future landlord? Is there anything else I should know? And that's where you kind of get, hey, they're wonderful. They're friends of the family. We've known them for a long time, and we kind of get the coffee table conversation, which I really appreciate when we get to that point. At this point, you've really kind of connected with this landlord. You're starting to see the underbelly of what, these potential tenants are all about. And you're kind of figuring this out. Is this going to work? Is this not going to work? But again, this landlord reference is only one part of the whole application. Okay, so up to this point, you have received a preliminary application. Just name basic information from this potential tenant. Okay, you've got your potential tenant checklist going. You've gone through some of these items, and you've called their former landlord reference, or even character reference, something very similar if they're going to be, let's say the landlord has passed away, but you've got a character reference from a professor at their university. So if you've got a character reference checklist, it's something very similar, and say, how long did you know them? So you can take the reference checklist for a landlord and you can alter it for a character and say, if you had a rental, would you rent to them? If you knew them, give me an example of how you know them. How long did you know them? And what reference did you know them? Some kind of something that is not just on paper. That's typically what I go with. Okay. So once you've done your checklists, you've gone through the entire conversation, the applicant has seen the unit, then it's time to complete the application, because remember, they just gave you a preliminary application. Did they give you all of the information that you've asked for? Do you still need IDs, pay stubs, bank statements, credit reports, credit scores? Do you need to check their credit? In Canada, you've got to pay for a credit report, but you've got to ask their consent to get it. But in the US, the potential tenant pays for it themselves. Now, they can provide you one, and I can say that I want a credit report with the score within the last 30 days. And so they can go to a number of different websites and pull that for themselves, or they can say, you know what, just send me the link, I'll pay for it. And then I get a copy, and so do they. They get a copy as well. Okay. At some point, you're going to need to say yes, or you're going to need to say no, because it is very possible that you could have multiple potential tenants for the same unit all at once. In fact, in today's day and age with the housing crisis, it's probably likely that you're going to be having several people qualifying all at the same time. All right, because we're talking today about references, the art of checking references, I decided I would throw in a bonus reference, a bonus resource for all of you landlords out there. Every once in a while, I have gotten a request from a tenant, from a departing tenant, who is asking for a reference letter from me. Okay. Now, for those of you who have listened to my podcast in a bit, there's a episode that I did about how to up your chances on getting an impossible rental. And in that, I talk about the package that you need to create as a potential tenant to make it easy for your landlord to say yes. What I'm about to talk to you about is a tenant reference letter for your departing tenants. The letter would go in that package. You're doing the work for that future landlord. So while the majority of this podcast was all about checking references, I'm giving you a bonus here on how do you provide a reference, a letter, not just the phone call, because there's very likely as a landlord, you're going to get the phone call. You're going to get the other end of the phone call. People are calling and asking you about these tenants. But how do you provide a tenant reference letter for departing tenants? Okay, I'm going to talk through this, and then the template I'm making available on the website, mylifeasalandlord.com. Okay, so I've just done the template. It's in a PDF. Take it and make it your own. But basically on letterhead, you've got your landlord, company, address, city, state, or province, phone number. And if you've got a website, great. The date regarding the tenant name. And you say, dear tenant, the security deposit or reference letter for whatever the address of the unit is. And then something like, we appreciate your tenancy and are pleased that you chose our company to meet your housing needs. We wish you all the best in your new home and would be pleased to hear from you if you need housing in our area again. Now think about that. The last question you ask a former landlord is, would you rent to them again? In that one line, I have already answered that for the future landlord. I'm welcoming this tenant back. So landlord reference information. Here's the information I go. Now, this is sort of the nuts and bolts. You need to know these dates and these amounts. Deposits were paid on whatever date they were paid. Move-in date, whatever day you moved in. Move-out date was date of move-out. And your rent at the time of move-out, because you know you can have rent increases as you go. Amount of deposits amount of deposits returned. And that's going to be however much it's returned. And then the last bit I say is this account was in good standing at the time of move out. Again, we hope you will consider us as landlords again should your journey return to our area. If you have any questions about your tenancy, please email me or phone me sincerely. And then I sign it with my name and my company. And the other thing I say is in the event someone has ended the tenancy early, but they were a rock star tenant, they were awesome. The only reason that they're not getting their deposits back is because they broke their lease and they forfeit their deposits. I will put something in that and say, had your work not taken you away from us early, we would have had no problem returning your deposits. I would say that straight in the letter. And then I send that off. I've only provided maybe a handful of these over the years, but it's such a powerful tool for the tenant moving forward that it's an amazing resource. And so as a landlord to another landlord, I want you to be prepared when you have a rock star tenant that you're losing, give them this as a parting gift, and that's going to be amazing. Okay. In today's podcast, we talked about preliminary application, how to set up your potential tenant checklist, how to do a former landlord reference checklist, and as an aside, how to do a character reference, just a quick character reference in the event the landlord is not available. Sometimes I do both. Then we talked about a bonus resource of providing a tenant reference letter for departing tenants. But just as an aside, I want to let you know that all of the checklists are available. Lots of references on the website, mylifeasalandlord.com, and there's previews of these resources today. Here's your call to action, all my landlords out there. Take a look at the resources that are on the website and make them your own. If you are a seasoned landlord, there may be a nugget or two that I talked about today that you had no idea would be helpful. Take it and make it your own and increase your toolbox so that when something happens, you are prepared and not freaking out. Okay. We don't want you to be stressed. We want you to find the right tenants and have a very nice long tenancy. Okay, there's your call to action. Let me know your comments and questions by emailing me at learn@mylifeasalandlord.com. Remember, comments and questions create the next podcasts and the next resources. And speaking of which, when you get to mylifeasalandlord.com, you will see 2 free blackout bingo cards pop up, one for newbie landlords, one for pickle landlords. Both are designed to help you educate yourself as you move forward in your landlord journey. They are free, so check it out. Next week's podcast topic is a tenant-based topic, and that's episode number 51, where I have received an interactive email from the Office of the Privacy Commissioner of Canada. I can't wait to show you all about that. We'll see you there.